Hi, welcome to Dishin' with Stephanie's Dish, and I am here with the author Lauren McDuffie, and she is someone that I'm just getting familiar with. So, Lauren, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, your book, Homemade-ish, I think I saw it like on maybe a publisher's weekly list, and
Mhm.
then I started paging through it. And I hope this like hits you in the right way. You're kind of like sort of semi-homemade-ish, but not
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes, no, you really hit the nail on the head with that.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I used to watch Semi-Homemade with Sandra
Me
Lee in the
too.
beginning of the Food Network days, and she's kind
Yep.
of gotten a bad rap. What I loved about her and what I loved when I was going through your book too is just this idea that we don't have to like make every single thing from scratch in order to put a decent meal on the table for our family.
Right. That's just true.
And it prevents people sometimes from cooking at all. This
Yes.
idea that cooking is so complicated and so hard. And as
Mhm.
someone who, I mean, I'm just a home cook, and I
Yeah.
feel like that's a great space where you can sometimes take shortcuts and also knowing the shortcuts to take.
Yes, exactly.
So your book, Homemade-ish,
Mhm.
is really lovely. And I
Thank you.
felt like was the modern day version of sort of that idea because your food looks incredible.
Thanks.
You must be are you a photo stylist because your food in your book is like amazing.
Thank you. Yes, I did the photography and the styling for all my books, and I just love that part of the process so much. So thank you for saying that.
I
Yeah.
did laugh because you have a piece in there. You talk about like I just love this. This is my joy. And I'm in the middle of finishing a second book and I'm
Oh,
not
great.
feeling that it's my joy.
I get that too. Yeah, that's
So
fair.
I was like, oh
Not
my
my
God,
joy all the time, so I understand.
yeah, I have 35 pictures left and I don't even want to eat the food anymore because I'm so sick of it.
Yep, you've spent enough time with it probably. I
Yes.
get that. I do.
So catch my listeners up a little bit
Okay.
about you and who you are and your blog.
Okay. So yes, I run a recipe website called My Kitchen Little, which I think it just turned 5, like within the past week. So I don't know, in blog years, that's not a baby anymore. So and I run it as a business, which I really enjoy. But prior to this website, I had a blog, which was very much a writing space. I love to write. And I started that, I don't know, maybe 12, 13 years ago, a long time ago, back when food blogs were still sort of a novel thing. Not everyone had one at the time. So I started that when my daughter was a baby and I just needed an outlet. And for me, cooking has always been my favorite sort of creative outlet. I love food. I love to talk about food. And a blog just seemed like a really nice way to gather together my creative interests with writing and cooking. And eventually I fell in love with photography just by necessity because I learned that people want to see what you're talking about.
Yes.
So I grew a new love for that whole side of it too. So I had a food blog for a really long time purely as a hobby. But I met a lot of other people along the way who were in food land just like me, but in different ways. And I had the opportunity to do my first cookbook several years ago, which was kind of an homage to my Appalachian roots. And then I did another book a few years later, which is called Southern Lights. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina at the time, and
You did? My brother lives there. I love Charleston so much.
love it too. We moved to Portland a year ago from Charleston, and I was very sad to leave. But I love Portland too, so it's been fine. But yeah, I have a special spot in my heart for Charleston, and that book sort of was inspired by just my time living in the Low Country and in the South, and I wanted to show off the healthier side of the Southern table, which was a really fun book project. But this book, Homemade-ish, I just really enjoyed doing because I've found that a lot of my actual friends, like in my neighborhood and in my real life, are really drawn to things that are genuinely easy, truly low maintenance, and unintimidating. I love a long cooking project with the best of them, something that takes all day, and then I have to go out into the world to find really obscure ingredients. I like that because I'm a food nerd, and that's the kind of stuff that makes me happy. But a lot of people, in fact, most people that I know, they're not like that. They do, however, want to make food themselves in their home because there's a lot to be said for that, but they want to do it with the least amount of fuss that,
Yeah.
possible. And so that's really where the idea for this book came. And I also did used to watch Semi Homemade, and I appreciated kind of the heart of the show. The point of it made so much sense to me. So yeah, I kind of wanted to breathe some modern new life into that concept. And because ready-made foods and store-bought foods have really come a long way since the 90s, and there's so much out there, that's really great fodder for jumping off and being creative and doctoring up into something new. And that's kind of the point of the book.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you take something that's maybe giving you a helping hand, as it were, like
Yes.
pesto or
Yep.
deli meats or even rotisserie chicken,
Yes.
and then you kind of take it the rest of the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that cookbooks really serve a wonderful purpose in just giving ideas. Also, I think sometimes just coming up with what to make for dinner can be, a deterrent in and of itself. And so I'm hoping that these recipes are also fodder for people's own just riffing and their own interpretation. So hopefully it'll help people see their grocery stores kind of in a new light. Like, what can
Yeah.
this do for me? Yeah. Yeah.
You mention in the book, I think it's five, like of your favorite products that everyone should have in their pantry at all times, that you always have a meal available. And maybe it
Hmm.
wasn't exactly five, but I think it was pesto was one. Curry, I think prepared curry was the,
Curry paste. I love a curry paste.
and can you share a few more?
Sure, and I think that this list probably changes a little bit, but for me, a rotisserie chicken is always a go-to. I tend to never get sick of finding ways to wield a rotisserie chicken because you can just do so much with them. But I think this is gonna, people scoff at bagged salads sometimes, which is silly to me, but I do a lot in this book with bagged salads. I usually have one in my fridge to play on and riff on. I think they're really valuable because it saves you time with chopping and
Yeah.
procuring all of the individual things. There's something to be said for that. So,
Do you
so I
have
love the
bagged
bagged salad.
salad? Like, are you an Aldi person? Are you a Trader Joe's person? Are you whatever your grocery store is where you are? Because they apparently,
Yeah.
someone told me once that the bagged salads at Aldi that are $3 are really quite good, and I've never had one.
Oh, I haven't either. Although I see people talking about Aldi more and more singing its praises. So I will have to check that out. That's really good intel.
I
It's
can't get
funny.
past the quarter to get the cart.
Oh, yeah,
It
I didn't
bugs
know
me. I'm
that.
like, come on, like it's a quarter. But people say it ensures that the people bring the carts back into the store.
I see. Okay.
I'm
Okay. Well,
just
that
like,
makes
charge
sense.
me $1. I don't care. I don't want to have to fish around in my bag for a quarter.
Right. I know. That's true. I didn't know about that whole thing. Okay, that is interesting. But it's funny you mentioned Trader Joe's because I just went there last week for the first time in like 6 years for no reason other than that I've moved a few times and COVID happened and I just hadn't been in a while and I forgot how much I love that store.
Yeah.
And it's perfect for this book because they have so many wonderful things that are already kind of made and started for you. But yeah, I almost panic bought so many things when I went in there because I was like, oh gosh, it all looks so good.
You are my person because I'm a panic shopper,
Yeah.
like where I just and during COVID, I mean, I have still nightmares about trying to go to the grocery store during COVID and just
Yeah.
literally throwing things in your cart and running out. But I'm
Just,
also a panic orderer at a restaurant because I want
oh,
everything.
oh, I know. I feel you on that. I'm a little bit like that. I close my eyes and just play roulette and just
Yes,
put
because
my
it's like,
finger down.
oh,
No, I get that. But I got some salads there last week to your point that were very good. So, but yeah, normally I grocery shop so much just for my work that it's almost a daily thing. And I do get delivered groceries, which people think is funny because I don't always pick out my own individual this and that. But for pure efficiency's sake, again, which is sort of the heart of this book, I just shop at like my big local supermarket and get all my bagged salads and sundries there, and use them in a pinch. They're always helpful. Yeah.
Every day, what does your day look like? Like, are you already working on the next book, and is that what you're doing every day?
Yeah, I did this book right before we moved from Charleston to Portland, and I did it really fast. For me, it was fast. And it didn't burn me out, but it definitely gave me a nice kind of pause in the cookbook making, because I had a book come out a year ago as well. So I had two come out pretty close together, which has been really fun. But I'm just kind of enjoying sitting back a little and looking at the stuff I've made, and I'm actually working on a non-food related book right now, just to see if that can go anywhere. So, but I've been focusing a lot on my website and growing that. I just, as I said before, it's past the 5 year mark, and it's really nice to see that coming more to fruition and doing pretty well. So I've just kind of thrown myself into that side of things, but I'm sure another book idea will surface because I love making them. But like you were just saying, it's a lot. When
Yeah.
you're in it, it's like, whoa, why am I doing this? But it's great when all is said and done. But yeah, I took a little break.
There's been a kind of trend that I've been seeing with cookbook authors and recipe
Mhm.
developers. I'm curious if you're thinking about this at all. We have a lot of people that have launched Substacks, and
Mhm.
Instagram and TikTok are just full of recipes, and we're in some respects, I feel like, have reached this like everything is just like this free recipe, and people just comment like recipe, recipe, recipe.
Yes.
And
Yes.
with that, which is great because you build an audience and you build a community, there are some creators that are like, wow, I'm just putting all this time, energy, and money into this thing that the books aren't making money like they used to. Podcasts have never really made money unless you're like the top 20.
Yep.
And so we have all these creators spending all this energy, and we're all chasing, the few cents that you get when someone watches something on a YouTube. So I'm wondering if like we're almost at like some of the creators, Carolyn
Mhm.
Chambers has talked about this, about taking all of her recipes off of her website and really funneling people only into recipe ways that she can monetize. Have you
Mhm.
thought about that at all, or do you think about that when you're working on your blog?
Yeah, I do. Because sometimes it does start to feel almost futile when you really sit back and you think about, I mean, and you just summarized it really well. I go back and forth. I mean, I actually started a Substack as well, and I've enjoyed that as a separate space for me to write more creatively, because no one comes to food blogs anymore, as you know, to hear what anyone has to say about their life. I mean, that's
Right.
a big joke now, get to the recipe already. And so my Substack became sort of that. I think for me, it's been motivating because my own traffic on my website has grown exponentially over the last year, really, maybe year and a half. And that keeps me in the game. But I do sometimes wonder, and I had someone ask me just last week about another factor, which is AI is now a part of things as well, too, which is so intimidating. And it makes me wonder, is that where people are just going to stop, for all of their recipes, and are we going to become obsolete? I don't know. It's scary actually to think about it, but I have some very, very dear friends who are full-time food bloggers and are very helpful resources for me and have taught me a lot about SEO, which is search engine optimization, and it's sort of how to play the game with Google so that you get your content in front of all the people out there who are Googling things all the time. And it keeps me inspired and motivated when I talk to other people who have found real success in this. But I don't know, to your question, it is a little bit nerve-wracking and scary to think about what's going to happen 5 years from now. I don't really know, but I just know that I enjoy doing it, and I'm enjoying the little wins and little successes that I'm seeing month to month right now, and that's keeping me going. And the books, like you said, I don't know many people who write cookbooks to get rich, but it's a wonderfully legitimizing thing to have. I love having a tangible
Sure.
representation of my work, and it's just I love them. I love that I've done them, and it's valuable in other ways that aren't necessarily monetary, and it all kind of works together as this little food machine, and who knows exactly where it's going. But I'm confident and optimistic that it'll still be there's still a place for our blogs and recipe websites.
Well, and to your point, I think what is also happening, which is sort of in your wheelhouse, I don't consider myself a writer. My husband actually is a writer, so I'm pretty careful about what that looks like in that space. I am a 300 words or less person.
Yeah.
I am a bullet pointed list. That's how I think,
Mhm.
and that's what works for me. But to your point, if you have like talent in the writing space, and having your own personal points of view, I do
Mhm.
think that there's always going to be room for that where people align with your vision or your values or your lifestyle choices and they get to know you and they want to be more in your world.
Hope so. Yeah, I think so too. I really do. That human element of the equation is special, and I think people like it. It's a really nice thing. And so I'm hoping, in fact, I've actually made a commitment to invest more into the writing in my website, even though I'm not telling you a story about my life anymore.
Right.
But you can still weave your voice into how you explain food. Most of my blog posts, I don't even really call it a blog anymore. It really is more of a recipe website, but there's still tons of words in there, and you can pick and choose which words you use. And I try to make mine as useful, but also entertaining and worth people's time to read. And that's one way you can separate yourself from the bazillions of other people who are doing the same thing. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
I'm talking with Lauren McDuffie and her book is Homemade-ish. Couple of other things in your book specifically that I really loved. I don't know. I was thinking about this today. I
Mhm.
was doing a TV segment with a friend, and there was a laundry guy on, and he was talking about, the 5 things you need to have in your laundry room. And I
Oh,
thought, wow, there's blogs, and I've got like kitchen essentials, and you
yeah.
really broke it down this in your book, some things worth noting about
Mhm.
what the 13 things you literally need to have in your kitchen. I'd
Yeah.
never seen a list so small and so spot on. So good for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I that list came to be because I was photographing the book, and I realized I have rooms filled with props and things that I've used for years because I work as a food photographer and stylist, but in the name of keeping things real and authentic, I just used the stuff that I genuinely cook with in my real life. So yeah, it made it very clear that you don't need a lot. I love minimalism. It makes me feel good, and so I wanted to kind of capture that.
Yeah. So it was a cutting board, a chef's knife, a large deep lidded pot, a large skillet, a medium lidded pot, large baking sheets, a muffin pan, which I might argue with you on the muffin pan.
Yeah, I know. I had to sneak that in because there's 2 recipes in my book that require it.
Okay, all right. A Dutch
Yeah,
oven, a grater, a can opener, a large spatula or spoon, a blender, or and a strainer. And
yeah.
like I guess because the one thing that the muffin pan is you can't replicate a muffin pan really.
Well, that's true. Well, and I think specifically, I was just trying to say that you can literally make every single thing in this book with just these 13 things. But I'd be willing to stretch that and say you could probably get by with cooking a lot more for a lot longer with just these things. You really don't need, I mean, and you're right, the muffin pan is very unique to the to this book. But yeah, I think in general, less is more. I'm not a big single use kitchen tool person. I used to be, but we have moved so much. Like my family, we've moved a lot, and that'll make a minimalist out of you. At
Yeah.
least it has me. So yeah, I wanted to weave that notion into this book because I think it's kind of refreshing.
So do you have an instant pot or a slow cooker?
I do have a slow cooker because I love them. They're so helpful. And I love a slow cooked thing. Like we're getting into that season now. So mine's like I've just dusted it off and it's ready to go. But yeah, I don't have an instant pot and I'm sure I would like it. I mean, I'm sure I would like an air fryer. I don't have that either.
Yeah.
And I know people love them, but that's just me probably being resistant to one change. And then also if we move again, that's another thing I'm gonna have to pack and unpack. So
Yeah, you don't need an air fryer. And the only
I
thing I
don't
would
think
say about
so.
the Instant Pot is the pressure cooking aspect is really nice, and it's a
Yeah.
slow cooker too.
Ooh,
But
yes. Oh,
there's something kind of homey about your ceramic slow cooker, you know?
yes. And I love a Dutch oven, like old school, just, but I also work from home. And so I'm here to do that. But I used to not work in my house and I loved a slow cooker because it made everything so easy. So
Yes.
yeah. Yeah.
So, as you're thinking about food trends and kind of new products, like one of you have a recipe that's kind of like this. You know, we went through a shakshuka phase.
Yes. Hmm.
Are there any like trends that you're seeing on the horizon that you're like, oh, I need to simplify that?
Mm. That's a great question. Um, well, one trend that I've literally been working on just this morning is I'm really obsessed with chili crisp, which is something I see all over the place. I like spice. And so I've been trying to think of ways. In fact, I just shared in my I think I shared in my newsletter, or I'm getting ready to, ways to kind of make your own, but using a store-bought one as your, just like with Homemade-ish, using it as a launch pad. So I took a chili crisp that I bought. Um, from maybe Trader Joe's. And I turned it into a Southern style chili crisp by adding some like candied pecans and a little apple cider vinegar and like tobacco.
Yum.
Like so it and brown sugar, I think, or molasses is what it was. But anyways, I Southernized an already store-bought product, which is very much what this book is sort of all about. But I keep seeing chili crisp everywhere, and it makes me so happy because I love it.
I
So
really want to put that on a white bean or cauliflower puree. I'm just
would be the
hearing you
perfect
talk
move.
about it.
That's the perfect idea. Yeah, that would be good.
Um, do you like some of the, as I look at cookbooks,
Mhm.
sometimes I see like that, and this is why I'm probably not a very prolific person when I do this. I kind of plod along,
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm gonna make, this double stuffed something. And then they find 12 other ways to make the same thing, but just with different twists on it. Do you
Yeah.
think like that?
I think I do now, but that's because I have to think strategically about how I publish recipes on my website, at least, because that's very useful just for getting views and getting people. It's funny how my brain splits into when I'm writing recipes for a book. It's a very different, it's much freer actually, creatively. But then to your question, when I'm working on coming up with recipes for my website, yeah, if I can split something off and offer variations, that serves me really well. So yeah, I think my brain does work that way. Yeah, the more the merrier.
Yeah. And I know I'm always like, there's a reason people are doing it like this. And
Yeah.
I'm not doing it like that, but I know there's a reason why people are. And it never
Mhm.
occurred to me that it was due to SEO, but that makes total sense.
Yeah, that's why I would do it at
Yeah.
least. So, yeah.
Are there other cookbook authors that inspire you or that like books that you just will never take off your shelf, considering that you've moved, so you've probably pared down?
Yes, I really have. I donated some books that I'd worn pretty well, but yes, I love Alison Roman's books. I think but well, her food is a lot like the food that I just cook for myself on any given day because it's very simple. It's nothing more than it needs to be, and I like that. But I really respect and appreciate anybody that truly innovates and carves out their own style. That's really hard to do. I mean, I live in this very saturated world of recipe development and food. And so anytime someone comes along and has a very distinct and sort of fresh feeling point of view, I just think that's great. I
She's
admire
good at
that.
it.
Yeah, she's good at that. She's done that for herself. So she's the first person that came to mind. And I have her books, they're sitting out and they have been for a long time. So yeah, I love her.
Is there like a classic recipe that you just find yourself coming back to that's maybe from your blog that you just love and
Yeah, I always say my most, I guess, well-loved and well-worn recipe. I love Cajun and Creole cuisine, and I've got just this etouffee recipe that I have been making for a really, really long time. That's got shrimp and chicken and andouille, and it's just so good. I've made it for I think everyone that has ever come to my house. It's just so tasty and it tastes better the longer that it sits. Anything that can check that box, I'm going to automatically be a fan of. But I think that's my all-time favorite. And I love like a coco van as well. In fact, I'm sitting here today working on chicken stew collection for my website, and that's just my favorite, I think, category of food just in general. But my all-time favorite would be like an etouffee, like a
Yeah.
spicy one. Yeah, I love them and I make them all the time. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
that is super Southern too. Like
Yep.
something that, sometimes I think like, oh, do I even need to like tell someone a recipe for this? Like some of it seems so obvious,
Yeah. Oh,
but
sure.
that is something, and I guess you get accustomed, like I can make gravy like nobody's business,
Yeah, sure.
but in the Midwest, we had grew up with gravy on everything, so it's
Yeah.
sort of
I
unique.
can appreciate that. I know I forget sometimes how I assume things are just so easy and you don't need recipes for things, but then I'll have friends who just are like, Lauren, no. That's why I wrote this book. They're just like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
My brain doesn't work that way. And so I always equate it to the way that I am with gardening. I don't know how to do anything with plants at all. I'm so ignorant. And so I always just try to remember like how I am with plants is how some people are with cooking. It's just not you want to do it, but you just aren't super well
Yeah.
versed in it. So yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna put a link to the book, obviously, Homemade-ish, in the notes here. I will also remind me of the name of your blog again.
It's called My Kitchen Little, and so it's
Okay.
just mykitchenlittle.com.
It's cute. And then I'll find your Substack and I'll link to it too.
Great. That's great.
And we'll go from there. But it was really lovely to spend time with you. I
Guys,
really think the book is clever.
yeah,
I felt like I knew right away people in my life that would really get a lot out of this.
good to hear.
And it's beautifully shot, which is also, I really admire that because I'm over here with my stupid iPhone, but it's
Thanks.
beautifully shot. It looks great, and I would recommend that people buy it. When I really sat down with it and went through the recipes, I liked it very much. It's homemade-ish, recipes and cooking tips that keep it real. And I liked your 13 things you need in the kitchen, probably minus the muffin pan.
That's fair. That's fair. I get it.
All right. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.